I'm Eric Bigelow, and we're here for another roundtable with Rob Matthias, aka Voluntaryist Rebel. And we're going to talk about something rather interesting today. We're going to talk about abortion. Some of you may have seen Voluntaryist Rebel's latest video. We're going to try and dive a little bit deeper and, bounce back and forth on some opinions. So, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
I'm doing well. I got my coffee.
Same here.
Gotta have the coffee. I'm an all-day coffee drinker.
They can take my guns, but they can't take my coffee.
Yeah, right. So I guess we'll start this off. I tried to kind of think about how we could go about this strategically, and how would you define the non-aggression principle?
Basically, you're not going to aggress against any other human life. You only use self-defense. You're not going to, murder or kill or steal or harm any other person.
Right. But we must note, too, that in the non-aggression principle allows for self-defense.
Self-defense.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So, we got that. Now, how would you define self-ownership?
Well, you own your body, and you have every right to do whatever with your body as you choose to do so. So if I want to ingest as much coffee as I want, or do as much other drugs, or whatever I want to do, that's my own personal ability to do so. No one has the right to tell me what I can or can't do to my own body.
Right. So those are basically the two things that are going to go with this conversation. And I agree with, both definitions that you just gave. I think that's absolutely dead on. So, now, we won't talk about our feelings yet, but I will go into Rothbard. I got it pulled up here on a chat room, but I know in Ethics of Liberty that he wrote, "The proper groundwork for the analysis of abortion is in every man's absolute right of self-ownership. This implies immediately that every woman has the absolute right to her own body, that she has absolute dominion over her body and everything within it. This includes the fetus." So there's that argument by Rothbard. And there's also an argument by Ayn Rand that says an embryo has no rights. Rights do not pertain to a potential, only an actual being. And I've also heard that Murray Rothbard claimed that the fetus was a parasite by definition. Now, I'll go ahead and say that I don't agree with any one of those things. And by your video, you don't, right?
No, I believe in all human life, including a fetus, is a human life that should not be killed.
I completely agree with that. Now, how would you make the argument with someone if they were to say, well, it's my body, I have right to do with it what I want?
Well, if we had a voluntary society, so, theoretically, there are no rules, there's no government.
Mm-hmm.
How would you stop that? Well, for that person, I would try to use, logic of you're killing a life. That life didn't choose to be there. They're not purposely aggressing on you. You, for the most part, allowed that life to become, to exist in you. So it's not, you don't have the right to kill it once you've already let it in, mm-hmm. so to speak. It's say someone kidnapped somebody and decided to hide out, in my house, so to speak, and I caught them. Would I have the right to kill both those people, the kidnapper and the kidnappee? I don't think I should have the right to kill the person that was forced against their will to be on my property. I was like, oh man, just go, just get out of here. But with that logic, I would be able to kill that person. It's a touchy subject because you do own your body, but I always look at, Ron Paul actually said this, he's not pro-life because of any kind of religious reasons, but what about the liberty of that life? And I kind of go along with that. I understand the liberty of the woman, but what about the liberty of the life that's in that woman?
Right. And I had something I was going to say, sorry, and I forgot. In voluntarism and anarcho-capitalism, we're against taxation, so we don't want social welfare and things like that. People would pay for their mistakes. you get in debt for this. You're not going to go to a government for help. You're not going to go to a government for, you have to rely on charity. You have to rely on churches or things like that to help you, right? So why would we not do the same thing with the abortion issue? Well, you know, it's a choice that you made. Now you're, I don't like this word, but suffering for the choice that you made. So why, like you said, why should that life be punished for your decision?
Well, I completely agree with that. But, like, with a lot of people, like, I kind of try to make this a point in that video I did. If we had an actual free market and voluntary society and whatnot, there would be no laws and regulations regarding adoption or even paying, like, case in point, in this country, it is very hard for couples to adopt. Very hard. That's why you always hear about couples going overseas to adopt, because it's literally easier to go overseas to adopt a child than it is to adopt a child in this very country.
And that's
so
sad.
If you got rid of all those laws, you get rid of all those things, who's to, I mean, it costs like $20,000, $30,000 to go through an adoption agency.
Yep. Who's
to say you just don't take that money and say, you know, for a woman that is pregnant and thinking about abortion, I'm like, here, we'll invest, we'll give you this money as long as you know, actually go through with the pregnancy, and you can use that money to pay off your debts, invest in a career, do whatever you got to do, but, you know, we'll take this money, or they can arrange some sort of other arrangement, but that's not something that's, I don't feel has ever really been discussed in voluntary or anarchist circles. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that's really been discussed much at all.
Yeah, I haven't heard it, and it's something that's worth talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you would literally be able to, and now you do get into a gray area where it's like, you know, you can have people become like baby factories just selling to the highest bidder, and you're like, you have like some sort of underground baby trade. I hope it wouldn't get to that point. I mean, because I can see that with the logic that I'm using, that I can get to that point. Maybe, I hope not. But all I'm saying is, if someone gets pregnant and doesn't want to be pregnant, there's other solutions than giving it up to like a state agency adoption and then going to abortion. I'm just saying there's another reason to go to a free market solution. That free market solution is that other people who want to adopt can go straight to the source.
Right. Yep. So in abortion, you would definitely say that that's not a medical procedure. That is violence.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with it being violence. And because if you were to put a picture of the aborted baby next to the babies killed in Iraq or Afghanistan by drones, I see no difference in that. Does that make sense?
No,
if I juxtapose those two pictures by one another, they're just as violent.
No, I completely agree. I mean, if you want, you can go online and find videos of them doing abortion with ultrasound, and you can see it happening. And it's just, it's violence, it's murder.
Yes, I totally agree. And then that would be the end all conversation for me and you. It's just getting other people to see it that way is what's hard.
Well, and also there's the whole concept. Have you ever heard of evictionism?
Say that again.
Have you ever heard of evictionism?
Mm-mm.
Evictionism, the way I understand it, is going forward, especially with the way technology is completely increasing at such a high rate. Who's to say that the mother just couldn't not murder the fetus or baby, but couldn't evict it to another woman? To say once that baby is healthy enough to be like just how you have like organ transplants.
Yeah.
Who's to say you can't transplant that fetus to another viable woman?
I guess that's an option. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's been. I've seen some conversations about evictionism, but I mean, just look at technology the way it's increasing so fast that I don't see why that's not out of the realm of possibility. If you can transplant an organ, I know it's not the same thing, but theoretically, I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility in the future, and that is a possibility. The open free market solution and evictionism, like actual medical procedure to transport the fetus to another viable woman, I think that could drastically reduce abortion in this country.
Now, what about the argument that that some abortions are to save the mother? Now, I've heard Ron Paul make comments on this, and he said that in his whole medical career, he might have seen one or two cases where it was actually to save the mother. Well, I mean, just what's your opinions on that?
No. I agree. If there is some sort of situation where, for some reason, the birth is going wrong, and if they continue, there is no doubt that the mother will die before, even if the baby is born or before the baby is born, if the mother is could be killed in the process, then that's the only time I would be okay with it. Like, you have, especially say that mother has a bunch of kids, and you can't take that mother away from the kids she already has. So yes, in that situation, I would be okay with it. But that's only because that baby is actually would theoretically cause her to die. So that is, in my opinion, a different situation.
Now back to the, this just popped in my head, but back to the Ayn Rand quote where she said that the embryo has no rights because it is a potential, and that it does not acquire any rights until it is born. You have an opinion on that?
Well, in my opinion, I don't know how medical technology was back then, but I mean, a baby can be very viable, like, to be born. Babies survive at like 6 months and higher and whatnot. I mean, some don't, but it's theoretically possible. I disagree, because when you get to that point, you're really just, where do you draw a line where something's a life and something isn't? And I don't know. I don't want to draw that line. I really don't want to draw that line where it's like, oh, well, it's so many weeks, or, at this point, it's not a life, or then it is a life. You get into a very gray area, and you're in the weeds arguing over when that time is okay and when it's not.
And I agree with you. I think that arguing that point is kind of almost silly, because, yeah, it might be a potential life. It can't sustain itself or support itself. But to me, it still has rights. It's still a life. It'd still be violent to kill it. Now, with her quote, where she says it's a potential, isn't a 2-year-old really a potential? Because if you threw it out on the streets, would it survive? No. It needs help, right? It needs help to get to the point where it can sustain itself even when it's out of the womb. So with that argument, does that mean we can start killing 2-year-olds? That's the way I look at it.
No, I completely agree. Like, I kind of, I'll say, like, well, if you believe in late-term abortion, where if it's not life until it's born, but if you believe, but that baby is still viable to live before it's born, would you be okay with post-birth abortion, a murder of a 1-month-old because they just didn't want that baby anymore? I mean, the thing is, if you own yourself, but you don't own the baby. Like, you don't own your kids. You may be their guardians, but you don't own your kids. Nobody owns her. You can't own another human being. Even if they're 2 years old, 1 year old, or still in the womb, you don't own another human life.
Right.
And you can't just throw away property like you would, like, oh, I don't want this DVD player anymore, I'll just throw it out. You can't do that with a human life, regardless of how old they are.
Now, here's something to think about, too. If the woman does not want that child, right? And she has an abortion, most people, okay, that's fine, your choice, whatever. But sometimes that can happen without the man's consent. Now, if the man doesn't want the baby, kicks the woman in the stomach to force her to have an abortion, he can be tried for murder. So that proves right there that there's people that view that. Why is it murder if the guy kicked the woman in the stomach? Basically, I know that's kind of a silly argument, but it kind of proves the fact that it is a life if the man can be prosecuted for it.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
I agree. It's definitely a life, no matter where you're at. And no, men actually really don't get enough say in whether or not there's a abortion or whatnot. Because if you're a man, get your girlfriend pregnant and you're pro-life and she isn't, and she may not even tell you. She can just go get it done, not even tell you, and you would be none the wiser.
The other thing, I can't remember where I seen this, but if let's say the man doesn't want the child, right?
Okay.
And the woman wants the child, and he throws his hands up, I don't want nothing to do with it. I've told you that I don't want the child. he's considered a deadbeat dad, and it's selfish of him to do that, right? It's selfish of him to not want anything to do with his child, but he's expressed that he doesn't want anything to do with that. Now, if the man does want the child, and the woman doesn't want the child, she can go have the abortion, and she's looked at as she's exercising her rights as a woman, but she did it out of the same selfishness as the man in my previous example. So shouldn't she be viewed as a deadbeat mom?
I would view her as that.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, yeah, it's a double standard. It's a huge double standard, and women get a pass on it, but if the man wants the same thing, they're viewed upon as But there's double standards all through society on many other issues.
There is.
But that is double standard. Though I have a question for you.
Okay.
Well, how? And I still contemplate how it would happen. But if, say, theoretically, we achieved a completely voluntary society, how would you think a society would handle abortion? Like, how would we treat that? What would happen?
Well, I think that...
because we can't enforce it, there's no laws.
Right. I think it would boil down to education. And, well, I mean, that's really what the Voluntary Society would boil down to anyway, is education on the non-aggression principle and education on the right to self-ownership. People have to value those things almost above all else in the society. So I don't think that, this is a good philosophical conversation, but I don't know if we would ever, well, like you said, we can enforce it. So I think that, it would boil down to education. To try and that's a hard question. It is,
because you're pro-life. Like, it's one of those things where it almost wants you make you go back to mid-arc. It's like, well, let's write a law for that. We already banned it. That we can't. So it's like, well, we obviously don't believe in forcing another person to do what they don't want to do, but it's a very tricky issue because it's almost like the non-aggression principle. I guess it applies, but it can be used both ways.
Right.
It's like the only situation I know of where, depending on which angle you're coming from, like if you're pro-choice, you can use the exact same arguments that we're using for pro-life. Like, well, it's the mother's body, and she owns her body, and she can do whatever she wants to her body. And
our argument is that the mother doesn't own the baby's body.
But she makes the claim that she does, and I don't know. It's a very tricky. The only way I can see it, I really do see that if we had a voluntary society, I think abortion would be vastly reduced because, like I said, you're giving a lot of other options to women. Technology, like I said, evictionism could be a possibility as well, but definitely just couples would be able to adopt a hell of a lot easier than they can today. That, and in a voluntary society, your reputation is everything. Mm-hmm. Because when you're doing transactions with other people or interacting with other people, your reputation of who you are will be more and more prevalent, especially as we go forward. I mean, but your reputation will mean everything in a voluntary society, and there's going to be people that will ostracize people that do abortions. Like, we don't want to do business with you. We don't want to even interact with you whatsoever. You're not part of our society. Have a great day. And I can see that happening where, like, it's just like how right now you're forced to do business with people, Mm-hmm. Say, case in point, say you run a business and someone who is theoretically is an abortion doctor or whatnot, and you may find out that it is that person, but for the most part, the state may force you, well, you can't discriminate against this person. What he's doing is legal. You have to, do whatever you need to do with him. Mm-hmm. So, in a voluntary society, you can choose not to do business with anyone you don't want to, including people you disagree with completely.
I want to go back to what you were saying earlier, too, is that, or add to it, is that in a voluntary society, some people, or some women or families or whatever, get abortions due to financial situations. In the voluntary society, too, you would eliminate that. right? People's financial situations would be better because we don't
Yeah.
have a Federal Reserve destroying our dollar, right?
Oh, exactly. Everyone would be more financially well off because hell, for starters, you wouldn't have your money being stolen every paycheck.
Right, right. Yeah, you'd have a lot more money.
Yeah.
It would just be a better situation all around. So I agree with what you're saying that it would naturally, organically diminish.
Well, the free market would theoretically help create situations that help improve that. They would create, besides going straight to the source, but there can be other adoption agencies set up to go straight toward that person and offer some sort of alternative.
Right. So back to how would it be enforced? Your original question. I mean, it's almost like it's all encompassing. It's all the whole situation that the Voluntary Society would bring would help diminish it.
Well, okay, you know how you would have protective services in a voluntary society?
Like instead of police, you would have security agency.
You would hire someone to protect somebody.
Right.
Now, I was kind of thinking about this before earlier today. Theoretically, like case in point, say you had a hypothetical situation where the guy did not want an abortion and the woman did. Could he hire a protection service to prevent her from going to an abortion clinic?
I don't know how to answer that.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. I don't know. I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't know how that would even work in that situation. I have no idea. And then who really would be the aggressors then, the woman or the protection service?
Well, to me, in my opinion, anybody going after that life is the aggressor. Going after it to destroy it.
Yeah.
And, but here's a question, though, too, and I'll start off with my opinion, is right now I like having these conversations with people, and I think that it's conversations that need to be had, but ultimately, being pro-life is my decision, my family's decision, what happens in this household. I don't try and push that pro-life outside of this sphere, right? And if somebody else gets an abortion, I don't judge them. I don't look at them really negatively right now because ultimately I think it's kind of an argument that's not legitimate right now. There's so much other stuff that's going on. But at the same time, I think that it is legitimate because it's a moral stance that I think is important, because if we are non-aggressives, and that naturally plays into it to me, in my mind, though.
Well, I completely agree. And the whole thing with the morality thing, for one, I just like when people say, well, that's just because you're religious and that's your faith. Like, no. Like, I'm not personally religious, but I value all human life because human life is something to value. It has nothing to do with you whether you're religious or not. You can be atheist or the most conservative religious person in the world. You can still have the same viewpoint that all human life is sacred and to be protected. It doesn't matter, whether or not you're religious or not. But morality has nothing to do with it, well, with religion, but it has everything to do with the way you live your life and how you view killing other people. If you're against killing, you're against killing whether it's from a predator missile drone or from the hands of a doctor.
Right, and just like that picture I was talking about earlier, that if you juxtapose those two images next to each other, I don't see a difference. It's still violence.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's worth us just talking about right now, but it's not worth us trying to push those views outside of our spheres. Just like Voluntary Society, it relies on influence and our ability to educate and be loving to one another, to push that view forward.
Well, I agree. Well, see, the problem is, like, right now, like, that's why I think the Voluntary Society would be so much better, because if you look at right now, like, take your average conservative, all right?
Yep.
They are completely against abortion, which is rightfully so. But at the same time, that same person, now, I'm speaking completely, stereotypical, I could be wrong by certain people, but those same conservatives will completely look down at a single mom as as being promiscuous and, just wants to have sex all the time because she had a kid at a young age. but she's doing the right thing by not having an abortion.
Yep.
We should praise her for that.
Yep.
And so many conservatives don't do that. They simply look at her as like, oh, that's just, she's being slutty because, she was having sex at a young age and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, maybe she did, but she's doing the right thing. We should praise her for not having an abortion.
I agree with that. I agree with that. She should be praised.
But that's just society in general. Society in general looks down at single moms as like, well, what's wrong with them? I'm like, we need to praise anyone that's pro-life, regardless of where they are in their life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that view of, how did you say it, that single moms are viewed as they just want to have sex all the time, they're promiscuous.
Well, yeah, if you look at a young single mom and teenage mom, yeah, that's what they're looked at. But they could have had an abortion and they didn't, and that's something that should be, we should look at them as doing the right thing at that time. Well,
that view that they are just promiscuous and whores or whatever, I think that view is diminishing. It's going away. Not fast enough. But I think, I don't know, are people becoming less and less judgmental towards that? Because we see it more and more.
I think people are. I mean, our society, the fact that we have so much communication now, we're not locked into our little bubbles anymore, and we're experiencing new things. Like, I wouldn't even discover voluntarism if it wasn't for the internet, So,
right. Hence the reason the state wants to shut it down.
Oh, exactly. But no, I think society. I want to have hope that society is getting better and that they're, expanding their horizons and whatnot. So, I want to believe that.
Well, there is a saying, and I can't remember who said it, but he said that eventually you're going to have statists and anarchists, and that's it. It's not going to be Republican Democrats anymore. It's going to be people that are for the state and people that are against the state, and they're both going to be 100% dedicated to one of those two views. That time is coming, and I see it even at work now. Like, I've had Romney supporters come to me at work and say, hey, we see those stickers on the back of your car. That really makes us think. And then we get into conversations and they're like, yeah, I really agree with that. Why do we even need the government, And I think people's minds are opening up. And these are ex-Romney supporters. So I would say that that's a big deal from them to go to a Romney supporter to talking to somebody like me, and then eventually, at the end of our conversation, being intrigued enough to want to look into voluntarism.
Well, we're all statists at one point.
Yep.
It's just, we all get to this point through our own ways. Some people it took longer than others. For me, it took over 6 years, but some people made the jump. I know, like my wife made it in a year. She made it to this point in a little over a year, and it took me 6. So it's a little bit I'm embarrassed it took me this long to get to this point, in all honesty.
A year, really? Wow. Like, was she a Paul supporter or?
She kind of jumped the gun. Like, she literally, she came out, she was she really didn't like the government at all, but she went from, normal, I don't want to say normal conservative, she wasn't a normal conservative, but she literally went from, I guess, saying that we need a state till, 6 months of, pretty much me forcing her to watch, hey, watch this watch this video, this documentary, and literally, pushing me by the end of the election, screaming, why are you voting for Gary Johnson? You're just endorsing the system. I'm like, I want to support the Libertarian Party. and maybe it's more so that we pushed each other to the point that we both accepted that the state shouldn't exist.
Right. It sounds a lot like between me and my wife, I got to voluntarism pretty quick, and she supported Johnson. And I was like, you don't need to vote at all. And the same kind of thing, though. She made it within 6 months, too. Like, she went from Paul supporter to full-on voluntarist in 6 months.
Yeah, I went from your libertarian Ron Paul supporter to this voluntarism in 6 months as well. Most people, once they get to the bottom of libertarianism, to the bottom of that rabbit hole, it's usually 6 to 3 months, and then they just let go.
Yeah. So this is off the total subject of where we started, but that's fine. So do you see this voluntarist movement growing
I
Right.
do. I'm somewhat of a, I guess I would say a spectator. Well, not anymore. I'm not a spectator, but I've been watching the liberty movement since I started like doing research 6 years ago. And I can tell you right now, there is a paradigm shift going on in the libertarian movement right now. It's pretty much the only people that are still really out there saying that they believe in the state, being a libertarian, still working within a state, are pretty much the people that just discovered libertarianism. In my mind, a lot of libertarians, you see so many prominent figures, but not even prominent figures, just people you talk to that are libertarians. They're saying we don't need a state anymore. I don't want to be considered a state. It's just participating in the system.
Yep.
And I really think the Ron Paul campaign fast forward that movement, because that was really our last chance of saying, hey, we're going to give this system one more try.
Yeah, I agree with
you. One more time. And the fact that we couldn't, we're like, you know what? We're just going to walk away. We don't even need this anymore. That's my personal opinion on like why so many libertarians are jumping to voluntarism and anarchy and anarcho-capitalism and all that jazz.
Yeah, I think the movement is growing as well, but I think that the state is, this is going to probably sound silly, but they've got people on their payroll trying to discredit us, Glenn Beck.
Yeah, he speaks in half-truths. That's just, to be honest, I was a Glenn Beck fan for about 6 to 10 months. I was a fan of Glenn Beck. I remember watching his show on Fox, and, I think right when Obama was elected, I turned it on, and he was on there. Oh, who's this guy? Yeah, he'll give you half-truths of, he'll say the right thing, and all of a sudden he takes a huge turn to, Van Jones and 9/11 truthers. I'm like, really? Stick to the message of liberty. I don't know. And then he would always go off on Ron Paul, and that was kind of like the last dagger for me. Was like, I cannot support this guy if he's going off on Ron Paul.
But there's people, there are people that think that MSNBC is news or that Fox is news, and that there's people that are going to think that he is what libertarianism is. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I completely agree with you, but at the same time, if they discover Glenn Beck and they want to know what libertarianism is, they'll do their own research and come to our point. He's kind of like now this is way going off the subject where we were talking about, there are levels of the rabbit hole going down, depending on where you start at. You start at, you can start at either Alex Jones or Glenn Beck, and then you move on down a little bit further. You find out who Tom Woods is. Who's Tom Woods? And Andrew Napolitano. Yeah. And then you go down from there to everything from M. Kokesh to Paul Maloney, Mike Shanklin, and you keep going down and down. Then you start reading Rothbard or Spooner, and it's literally it's like going down a rabbit hole, and there's different levels of. Yep. But you don't get to the bottom level automatically. You have to walk there. You have to go down it to get there. I don't know if I'm making any sense with that.
No, I understand what you're saying. I agree with you.
Everyone needs their own red pill. That's what I'm trying to say. Everyone has their own red pill to wake them up.
So I think now we're in a unique opportunity too, as far as voluntarism, anarchism, and anarcho-capitalism, is because Republicans have lost all credibility.
Yeah.
So it's really our opportunity to start pulling those people in, because they're not going to go Democrat. I hate even talking party politics, but you know what I mean. They're not going to go from Republican to Democrats. They're going to be looking
That'd be too tribalistic for them.
What now?
That would be too tribalistic for them.
Right. Right. But they're going to be looking for something. You know what I mean? So it's really an opportunity for us all. And that's what I was trying to describe, too, from the guy I was talking with at work. He ex-Romney supporter, and really got intrigued by what I was, the theology I was telling him. And he's starting to come to me every once in a while and say, hey, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And is picking my brain, and you can see that he's really taking it all in and going and looking stuff up.
You just got, you just got to reach out to those people, the Republicans or libertarians, or there's people on the left that you can still reach out to as well, and say, you're against this police state and all this spying and all this war. So are we.
Right.
Come join us.
Yep.
So
I get irritated too, and you'll see people say, I'm anti-war, I'm totally against the war, but, they love Obama. And you see stuff like that.
I don't get that. It's Obama is literally Bush the third. I mean, he has done every single policy that Bush has done.
Yep.
And he just puts a nice, cool face on it, and like he continues Guantanamo, he continues the Patriot Act. He signed the NDAA, which blows anything, anything that a Bush ever would do. Bush wasn't advocating that I can kidnap you and put you away in a cage for the rest of your life with the U.S. military. Mm-hmm. Bush never did that, and Obama did that. Now, Obama has assassinated American citizens with robots in the sky with missiles that he can go anywhere on the planet with.
Yep.
I mean, he even killed, if you look into Anwar al-Awlaki and his son, they weren't killed in the same strike. They killed his son after they killed Anwar al-Awlaki. And his son was born in Denver, Colorado. He was at, a barbecue or something like that. Mind you, he was in Yemen, but nonetheless, they killed him just to kill him. And they released no information as to why or anything like that. And then if you want to get into the whole conspiracy about Anwar al-Awlaki dying at the Pentagon, months after 9/11, but yet he was our enemy that we had to kill with the Predator missile, even though they released no information as to why that warranted an assassination. All because he was the head of Al-Qaeda, or one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda.
Right. Well...
But, I mean, that's a dangerous slope because he was just speaking out against the government. How is that any different from me and you?
It's not. There's probably a drone over my
house. I mean, I'm not advocating violence. I'm not advocating violence against the government, but at the end of the day, we're speaking out just like he was.
Yep. Well,
I'm not defending Al-Qaeda or anything like that. I'm just simply saying he was an American citizen speaking out against the government, and that's exactly what all of us are doing.
Well, I think that's ultimately what the NDAA is for.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes me think that the movement is growing so strong so fast, because there's so much coming out that could potentially be used against us.
It's almost hard to keep up.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. So wrapping this up, so how would you wrap up your view on abortion, and where we need to go from here?
Educate as many women as possible about the options and what it really means, but also people that are pro-life, especially people that agree with the non-aggression principle.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really need to use. We don't need to go into the weeds about well, it's this life at this point, or all this information. We have morals and ethics, and we believe in the sanctity of all human life, and I don't really think that needs more
lines drawn.
That's a line in the sand.
Yep.
I believe in life. I don't need to defend the fact that I believe it's a life. I don't believe you should kill a life. I got nothing else after that. I don't need to go into well, at this point, it's the fetus is this big. I don't need to do any of that. It's a human life, and all life needs to be sacred.
Yep, I totally agree with you. I think that if we're going to hold this non-aggression principle up high and above everything else, that includes the unborn. And I think that abortion is violent. And I think that I agree with you, as we've said in our previous conversations on this Skype, that we need to educate women that there are options. We need to keep pushing for our Voluntary Society, and organically other options will come up. And
Voluntary Society would help. Like I said, it would help increase the other options for women. It would be a better situation for people who are pro-life, because a voluntary society would help reduce abortion, because you're giving another option to women that they've never even thought of.
Right, exactly. So I think we're on the same page. Everybody, as you watch this, please give us some feedback on the I Am an Individual page, or YouTube, wherever you might be seeing this, and give us some feedback on your views, and maybe it'll lead to another discussion. Hopefully so. That these are a lot of fun. But make sure you check out Voluntarist Rebel on YouTube. What's your address again?
YouTube.com/Voluntarist Rebel. No why. Long story with that one, just an I. But yeah, Voluntarist Rebel on YouTube. Or you can always follow me on Twitter at Voluntary Rebel, and find me on Facebook as well.
All right, so everybody make sure you check him out, and please give us some feedback below this thread here. Thank you.
Peace.